Home inspectors who open breaker panels for a living see the same handful of DIY shortcuts over and over, and one of them shows up in enough panels that the National Electrical Code has a specific rule against it, Section 110.14. None of these 10 mistakes look dangerous while you're making them. That's exactly the problem. A panel can run for years with 2 or 3 of these hiding behind the cover plate before anything actually fails, and the fix usually costs far more than doing it right the first time. We're counting up from the shortcut that just chafes a wire to the one that can kill a utility worker 3 blocks away. Number 1 lives right where the wires enter the box. Cables passing into a metal panel go through punched holes with sharp, unfinished edges, and those edges are exactly what a clamp, connector, or insulated bushing is supposed to protect against. Skip that piece and every bit of vibration in the house, a slammed door, a furnace kicking on, a truck passing outside, works that cable back and forth against raw metal a tiny amount at a time. It's not dramatic, it's not fast, it's just constant. Eventually the outer jacket wears through, then the individual wire insulation, and now you've got a live conductor touching the metal panel itself. There's no smell, no spark, nothing that draws your attention to the panel door. It's a slow failure with almost no warning, which is exactly why inspectors flag it even when nothing has gone wrong yet. Number 2 is assuming the panel is safe the moment you flip a breaker off. It isn't. Individual breakers only interrupt the circuit they control. The bus bars they clip onto, along with the main lugs where power enters the whole panel, stay energized as long as the main breaker is on, and in some setups, even components near the very top of the panel stay live regardless of what the main breaker is doing. Reaching in to add a breaker or move a wire without shutting off the main, and without verifying with a tester that the section you're touching is actually dead, is how experienced people still get shocked, sometimes on the 10th panel they've opened, not the first. Confidence from having done it once before safely is not the same thing as a dead circuit. Number 3 shows up as a panel that's simply too full. Every panel has a maximum number of circuit spaces it was designed and listed for, and DIYers who keep adding circuits over the years sometimes stack in tandem breakers, essentially 2 breakers sharing one slot, in a panel that was never rated to accept them in that position. The result is more current flowing through a bus bar than it was engineered to dissipate as heat, spread across a panel that's now physically packed too tight to let that heat go anywhere. Nothing fails today. Nothing fails this month. The panel just runs hotter than it was ever meant to, every single day, for as long as it stays that way. A panel with every slot full and no clean way to add one more circuit needs a sub-panel or a larger main panel, not a shoehorned extra breaker jammed into a spot that was never rated for it, and not a tandem swapped in on a Saturday afternoon because the hardware store had one in stock. Number 4 is buying whatever breaker fits, instead of whatever breaker the panel manufacturer actually built it for. Circuit breakers aren't universal. Different manufacturers use different bus bar shapes and proprietary mounting clips, and a breaker that physically snaps into a panel it wasn't listed for can still make weak, uneven contact with the bus, even when it looks properly seated from the outside. That weak contact is a resistance point, and resistance under load means heat, in a part of the system nobody's going to look at again until something trips or smells wrong. Home improvement stores sell breakers by the shelfful without checking what panel brand you actually have at home, and a breaker that clicks satisfyingly into place is not the same thing as a breaker that's electrically listed for that slot. This shows up constantly with older panel brands that have since gone out of production, where the only breakers left on store shelves are generic replacements never tested against that specific bus bar design. The listing sticker inside the panel door tells you exactly which breaker brands and models are approved. It's not a suggestion, and it's usually the first thing an inspector checks against whatever's actually installed. Number 5 is double tapping a breaker that was never designed to hold 2 wires. Most single-pole breakers have one terminal built for one conductor, and forcing a second wire under that same screw leaves both connections looser than either one would be alone, no matter how firmly the screw gets torqued down. Loose means resistance, resistance means heat, and heat under a breaker that's supposed to be protecting that exact circuit is the setup for exactly the failure the breaker exists to prevent. There's a real nuance worth knowing here, because not every double tap in the wild is automatically wrong. Some manufacturers, Square D among them, do make breakers explicitly listed to accept 2 conductors safely, with terminal hardware designed for exactly that purpose. Correctly double tapping one of those isn't a violation at all. The danger is doing it on a breaker that was never listed for it, which is the overwhelming majority of the double taps inspectors actually find in the field. Number 6 is the same mistake, one bus bar over. Double lugging happens when two neutral wires get crammed under a single terminal on the neutral bus bar instead of each getting its own listed spot, and the National Electrical Code specifically requires one grounded conductor per terminal for exactly this reason. Beyond the same loose connection, overheating risk as double tapping, a shared neutral terminal creates a second problem that's easy to miss entirely on a routine visual check. It makes it impossible to safely isolate one circuit to work on it without disturbing the other, since pulling one neutral loose under a shared screw can leave the second circuit's return path compromised while it's still carrying live current, which turns a simple future repair into a more dangerous one than it needed to be. Home inspectors tell some version of the same story about double taps and double lugs constantly. A panel looks fine on a walkthrough, cover plate on, nothing tripping, no complaints from the homeowner in years. Then an inspection ahead of a sale opens the door and finds 3 double tap breakers and a double lug neutral, all added piecemeal over a decade of small projects, each one seeming reasonable in isolation at the time. No fire, no shock, nothing dramatic enough to have ever gotten anyone's attention. Just heat quietly building at connection points nobody had checked since the day they were made, discovered only because a home sale finally forced someone to look. Number 7 is where a nuisance turns into an active hazard instead of just a latent one. A breaker that keeps tripping is a message, not an inconvenience, and the message is that the circuit is drawing more current than the wire feeding it can safely carry. The fix for that message is finding and reducing the load, or having an electrician upsize the actual wire alongside the breaker, matched pair, together. What too many DIYers do instead is install a larger breaker so the tripping stops, swapping a 15 amp for a 20 amp because it's sitting right there on the shelf and the panel slot fits either one. Now the breaker allows more current through than the existing wire was ever rated to handle, which means the wire can overheat and start a fire well before the oversized breaker ever sees a reason to trip. You haven't fixed the overload. You've disconnected the one thing that was warning you about it, and the wire keeps carrying the excess current in total silence. Number 8 only applies to a specific slice of houses, but it's a serious one where it applies. Homes wired between the mid-1960s and early 1970s often used aluminum instead of copper, back when copper prices spiked and aluminum looked like the practical substitute at the time. Aluminum and copper corrode when they're connected directly to each other, a reaction that generates heat exactly at the connection point, slowly over months and years of ordinary use. Devices and connectors rated for aluminum to copper transitions exist specifically to prevent that corrosion, using compounds and materials designed for the mismatch, and they're not interchangeable with the standard copper-only hardware sitting on the same shelf at the hardware store. A DIYer working in a panel with any aluminum branch circuits, who grabs a standard copper-only breaker or wire nut without checking the rating, is building a slow-motion hotspot into the panel, one that can take months or years to show any symptom at all, right up until it doesn't. The house doesn't announce which of its outlets or breakers sit on aluminum branch circuits. That's a question worth asking an electrician directly if your home falls in that build window, before any panel work happens at all. Number 9 is disabling the exact protection that was doing its job correctly. GFCI and AFCI breakers trip more easily than standard breakers because they're watching for things a standard breaker can't detect. Ground faults and arc faults, not just overloads, and both of those failure types can exist for a long time without ever drawing enough current to trip an ordinary breaker at all. When one of those starts tripping and a homeowner gets tired of resetting it, swapping it out for a standard breaker makes the tripping stop immediately. No more walking to the panel at midnight. It also makes the specific hazard that breaker was installed to catch completely invisible again, with nothing left in the circuit watching for it. A GFCI or AFCI that trips repeatedly is doing exactly what it's designed to do most of the time, not malfunctioning, and the fix is finding the fault it's detecting, not removing the detector. even if that means a few more nights of walking to the panel before an electrician can get out to trace it down. Number 10 is the one that stops being just about your house, and it's the reason it sits last on this list instead of the panel cracking risk of number 2. During an outage, some people run a heavy-duty cord with a male plug on both ends, sometimes called a suicide cord, from a portable generator into a wall outlet or straight into the panel, trying to power the house without a transfer switch or interlock kit. Without one of those devices physically preventing both power sources from being connected at once, that setup can send your generator's electricity flowing backward, out through the meter and onto the utility lines outside your house. Lines that a line worker restoring power nearby has every reason to believe are dead, because the whole neighborhood lost power. It's also a fire risk on its own terms, entirely separate from what happens outside, because backfed power skips the panel's normal overcurrent protection entirely, the exact protection every mistake on this list up to this point has been about preserving. An interlock kit costs a small fraction of what a wrongful death claim does, and it's the one item on this list where getting it wrong doesn't just risk your house, it risks someone who's never set foot in it. None of these 10 require exotic tools or rare knowledge to check for. A flashlight, the listing sticker inside your own panel door, and 20 honest minutes of actually looking will tell you whether any of the first 9 are sitting behind your cover plate right now. The 10th, the generator interlock, is either physically installed or it isn't, and that's a 5-second check the next time the power goes out. So here's what all 10 of these actually have in common. Every one of them starts as a shortcut that appears to work. The panel closes, the lights come on, the breaker stops tripping, and nothing bad happens that day, or that month, or sometimes for years. A working smoke detector on every level of the house doesn't care which of these 10 eventually causes a problem. Aluminum corrosion, an oversized breaker, a backfed generator, it just needs to still be doing its job the one night any of them stops doing theirs. Was it worth the 20-minute save skipping a cable clamp or upsizing a breaker instead of finding the actual overload, against the cost of the exact failure each of these shortcuts was designed to prevent? If you've opened your own panel in the last few years, it's worth having a licensed electrician take one honest look inside before you find out the hard way which of these 10 was quietly waiting behind your cover plate.